Holiday breaks are great for getting some much needed rest for both you, the teacher, and your students. However, coming back after that break can be difficult when it comes to classroom management. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 steps to take so that you can reboot your classroom management and you're not starting at square one. Stay tuned. What's kicking, education and rock stars? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Farah from Farah Henley Education, where I strive to bring you actionable tips, strategies, and simple systems to take back into your classroom to make your teacher life a little easier. Now, if this is your first time joining me here on the channel, welcome. Be sure you hit that like and that subscribe button so that you get notified when I go live or upload a new video here on the channel. I don't know about you, but from what I'm hearing from all of the teachers in our teacher community here at Farah Henley Education, you guys can use some things that are going to make your teacher life easier. And if you are one of those teachers who needs some strategies and tips just to make your life feel a little less overwhelming, be sure and drop an emoji down in the comments. Also, let us know where you're tuning in from. And I would love to know what grade level you teach, because we love getting to know each and every one of you that joins us here. Now, I am so excited to be in 2022. Listen, 2021 just kind of drug on. It just drug on. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired, and I haven't been in the classroom this year. I've just been coaching all of you amazing educators that are in the classroom, and I am so tired for you. I am tired when I listen to the struggles that you're struggling with, the overwhelm, the parent issues, the admin issues, all of those things. I am just absolutely so stressed and tired for you. I worry about each and every one of you. And just know that I feel you, and I'm here, and I'm going through those emotions with you, and I'm always here to lend an ear. Now, one of the biggest things that I get asked about with regard to classrooms and asking for help, and I get DMs, I get emails every single day about this topic, and that is classroom management. Now, classroom management is one of those topics that everybody has their way of doing things, and I discovered a few different things that I loved using for classroom management years ago, and they are still the things that even if I went back to the classroom now, back to the brick and mortar classroom, I would use. And anytime I'm teaching in a virtual classroom now, I use them as well. So these are tried and true classroom management things that I have just fallen in love with, and I think that they are amazing classroom management strategies. But today specifically, I want to talk to you about how to reboot that classroom management after a break. Now, this break could be the holiday break that we just had, or it could be a break because you need to take a few teacher days, either for your mental health, or maybe you're one of the unfortunate teachers who has been exposed and your classroom has got to be away from class, away from school. Maybe you have to go virtual. Maybe you're one of those teachers that's in a school that you're going back. You were delayed start, but you're going back virtually after the holidays. You never know when you're going to have a break, right? It could be spring break. It could be the normal holiday breaks. It could be a break for any reason. But when you come back into the classroom, your students have been away from class. They have been away from you. They have probably been kind of like, I won't say necessarily running wild, but they definitely need that refresher on what the expectations are in your classroom. If that just me, my students always needed that refresher when they came back. So I want to share with you 5 strategies, 5 tips for rebooting that classroom management, because I don't want you to have to start back at square one like you're starting a new school year all over again. Tip number 1 might be something that seems obvious, but believe it or not, a lot of teachers don't do this. And that is to revisit those classroom rules and maybe those classroom contracts. Now, depending on whether you call them expectations, if you call them rules, if you call them contracts, whatever you call them, but revisit them. And I'm not saying just to remind them and go, hey, don't forget we've got rules in this classroom. No, I mean actually revisit them almost the same way that you did it at the beginning of the school year. One of my favorite ways to revisit these classroom rules is to do what's called right way, wrong way practice. And you have heard me talk about this in some of the classroom management trainings that I have done, where we use the wrong way, right way practice when we're introducing the rules or the expectations, but using that after a break just to kind of reboot their hard drives in their brains with regard to those classroom rules and expectations can be really great. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to ask one of my most challenging students, behavior-wise, to actually come up and assist me with this, and I would have them show us the wrong way to follow a certain rule, expectation, or contract, and then I would also have them show me the right way. And I'm going to praise them for both. I'm going to praise them for showing me the wrong way and showing the class the wrong way. Chances are they're going to nail that one because they probably break it all the time. But then I'm going to have them show me and the class the right way to do it. What does this do? Well, one, it reminds me and them that they know how to follow this rule because they obviously can do it the right way if they're going to show the class how to do it the right way. And it also kind of resets their brain, especially if this is a student you've been working with before this break that you took, and it's going to reset their hard drive as well with regard to what it looks like for them to be following that expectation that you have set forth. Tip number 2 for rebooting your classroom management is to set new goals, especially if you are using one of my favorite classroom management tools, which is the Super Improver Wall. Now, you don't have to be using the Super Improver Wall in order to set goals with your students or set goals as a class. But if you are using the Super Improver Wall, now is a great time to revisit those goals that they set and to make new goals. Now, if you're doing this as a class, maybe you've got, you need to reset a timer on how long before somebody blurts out or somebody is off task or somebody doesn't raise their hand to ask a question. Whatever it is your expectations are, maybe you need to set a timer and you need to set a new goal if you've been working for that, to be able to get that longevity and how long they can go, that stamina that they're working on. But this is a great time for you to have, especially like during morning meeting or your morning time, to just kind of have a quick check-in with your classroom and talk about some goals that you have for that particular semester coming back after a break, or that particular time coming after a break. So revisit the goals, reset your goals, or set new goals for your classroom. Now, this tip number 3 is probably one of my favorites because, let's face it, things can get very, very mundane in your classroom, especially leading up to, for example, our longest break, which is typically mid-year over that winter holiday. And that is to spice up your routines. Now, when I say spice up your routines, I'm thinking about things like call and response or introduce a classroom management game. In fact, I shared some classroom management games over on our blog, and we will link to those in the description so that you can go check out some of those classroom management games for your classroom. But maybe it is just a new call and response. If you're using call and response in your classroom, for example, one of my favorite ones to use in my classroom was the Class Yes from Whole Brain Teaching. But call and response doesn't have to be Class Yes. It can be anything. If you have younger elementary students, maybe they loved peanut butter and they would respond with jelly time. Another one that I love to use after the holiday break was to start incorporating core content into my classroom, my call and response. So that might look like me calling out a math problem or a math fact or a vocabulary term, and my students would respond with either the answer to that math fact or the definition of the vocabulary term. Any number of things you can use for those call and responses, but using a new call and response in order to get the same goal or the same behavior out of your students can just spice things up. You're not necessarily changing the base way you're doing something. You're just spicing it up and making it new. I know on Talk Like a Pirate Day, we often would change to, whenever I would say arg, my students would respond with ahoy, matey. And those are just some fun things to do. So check your calendars to see if there are any holidays or any unknown, not holidays, but unknown, like Donut Day or Talk Like a Pirate Day or anything like that, that you might be able to come up with a fun new call and response. Now, as far as classroom management games are concerned, I love to introduce things like Classroom Bingo or the Classroom Connect 4 that I shared over in our blog post about games for classroom management. And I loved to introduce those after the holiday too. We wouldn't play them like year round, but they were special little classroom management games that I would bring in and play only after a break. So it was just a fun way to get things kind of rebooted and get my students really excited about being back at school. Now, you all know that I am a huge fan of using the scoreboard in my classroom. Now, after a break, I would use that opportunity to come back and kind of change the scoreboard up just a little. Maybe that was something like going, instead of teacher versus students, maybe I would do boys versus girls for a week or so. And maybe it meant that I was going to do tables against tables, however, groups against groups, however you want to do it. But I wouldn't do it the whole time because I always wanted to go back to teacher versus students at some point. But sometimes it just needs a little refresher. Tip number 4 is to refresh their memory of those procedures. So in addition to spicing up some of those procedures, you need to refresh their memory on what they are. Now, if you're using call and response procedures, for example, anytime my students needed to get a pencil out of their bag or whatever, I would simply say pencil. They would use a 3-peat where they would say pencil, pencil, pencil while they were getting their pencil out. Most of the time, those basic little call and responses like that, my students knew, and it really wasn't hard for them to get back on track. But sometimes I had to specifically and implicitly practice a call and response to a procedure, especially if it was like open your books to page 13. They're supposed to say page 13, page 13, page 13, and then they're supposed to all put their hands up in the air when they get there. That lets me know they're there. Well, sometimes I needed to remind them of putting their hands up in the air after they got to the page. This could work with your lining up routine, your bathroom routines, things like that. Sometimes you need to refresh their memories on these procedures. Tip number 5 goes back to the scoreboard, but really can apply to just about anything that you're using. If you're not using the scoreboard, that's fine. That's my favorite classroom management tool to use the whole year. But it's with regard to rewards. Now, even I tell you, you guys all know, and if you're new here, you're going to learn that I am not about giving my students junk. In fact, I believe that if you give them junk, and when I say junk, I'm talking about the little prizes that you typically get at places like Mr. Gaddy's or one of the places with the games where you get tickets, okay? And they go in and they trade these tickets in, and mom and dad have spent $30 to $40 letting them play games to get enough tickets for them to get this teeny tiny little slinky, this plastic slinky. And that little plastic slinky is broken before you get to the car, okay? Now, I'm aware that in this particular scenario that it's all about the experience and spending time as a family and playing the games and so forth. But in your classroom, listen, teachers are not millionaires, and we don't have a lot of money. We already spend so much money on our classroom. I don't believe in spending that money on junk that you know is going to be broken before it ever makes it home. In fact, it's probably not even going to make it to their backpack before it's broken. So, and I also believe that the more junk you give them, then they become junkies and they want more. So the more junk you give them, the more they want. And as that junk starts to grow and they get bigger junk, then they just want more and more and more. Now, in my training about the scoreboard, I also shared that you want to make sure you start with small rewards, okay? Small rewards, because you don't want to be giving them a popcorn party for winning something at the beginning of the year, because by May, you better be getting them tickets to Disneyland or Disney World. However, when you come back after a break, this is a great time to get new rewards, to up those rewards. So maybe if the first half of the year or before the break you were using something as simple as 1 or 2 minutes of talk time at the end of the day, or 1 or 2 less pages of homework, then coming after break, maybe you want to up that to maybe 3 minutes of talk time, or 3 less pages of homework. And you know, if you've seen my training on the scoreboard and using these type of rewards, you know that you're in control anyway, so they really don't know how many minutes you were going to give them, or how many pages of homework you were going to give them in the first place. So make sure that you revisit your rewards, and if this is a perfect time for you to up those rewards a little bit so that you can start a fresh new round with the rewards, then do so. But again, don't look to the junk. Look for things that are not tangible, that your students are going to get excited about. Maybe it's something as simple as getting to eat lunch with you in the classroom. My students always loved doing that. None of these tips and strategies have to take a long time. You can usually get through most of this stuff in just a few minutes in the morning that first day back, and maybe you want to take 1 or all 5 of these and do them the first week. So do 1 a day and practice just working on that one reboot strategy a day until you get through the first week back. So none of these have to take a long time. They should be very quick, but it's just a way for you to kind of reboot and reset your classroom after that break. When you go back into your classroom after any type of break, you are going to want at the very least to do a revisit your classroom rules and expectations. You're going to want to do some right way, wrong way practice, and you're going to just want to refresh their memories on those procedures. At the very minimum, you're going to want to do that. However, these other tips and strategies that I shared with you are a way to just kind of like liven things up, re-engage your students, and get them even more excited to be back at school. Now, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and simple systems to take back into your classroom to make your teacher life easier, check out the videos on your screen. Thanks for watching, and keep being educational rock stars.